Welcome to AI Ready Operations, Process Mapping, Automation, and Smarter Workflows. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jen Sweet, and I'll be assisting with the webinar today. We hope you get a lot of value out of today's session and enjoy the content, whether you're watching this live or on demand. Today's host is Ethan Erdebil, who is the founder and CEO of Spring to Innovation. She is also a TEDx Ottawa speaker and the author of the international best-selling book, Future Proofing by Design. She has dedicated her career to helping organizations achieve remarkable advancements through design thinking principles. And joining Nilfer today, we have a great guest speaker, Ethan Erdebil, a software engineer, technical strategist who helps organizations make sense of AI and ensures human judgment always leads the technology. With that, I hope you all enjoy today's webinar, and I'm excited to pass it over to Ethan and Nilfer.
Thanks so much, Jen. And
Hey.
Ethan, thank you so much for coming back on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Our webinar last month was really popular on some of the basics around AI, and we got questions afterwards in terms of what else do I need to know, and so that's why we've created today's webinar. Feel free to respond to some of our questions in the chat. It's going to be interactive. We have our first poll question for you. We want to get to know you better as an audience as well too. And so as you're on your automation journey, where are you on your automation journey? Are you setting up automation? Are you looking into automation, using AI as a chatbot, or not using AI? I'll give you guys a few minutes to answer those questions, and also to let you know that as you're answering the questions, we have a Q&A at the end, so also feel free to write your questions in the Q&A, and we'll make sure that we leave off a portion of time later on to cover some of the topics in the Q&As and answer any questions that you might have. So I'll give you guys probably another 10 more seconds. Where are you on your automation journey? Are you setting up automation, looking into automation, using AI as a chatbot, or not using AI at all? Excellent. And so I'm just going to end the poll here. And so it looks like most people are looking into automations or using AI as a chatbot. And then some folks are still setting up automation and some folks are not using AI. So that's really great to know. That helps us out in terms of understanding what phases you guys are at and how we can direct some of the conversation today. We have a second poll for you. Where are you with process mapping? So A, have you mapped your processes out? Have processes been mapped or removed inefficiencies? C, you don't have processes mapped, or D, don't know what process mapping is. So where are you with process mapping? Have you mapped out processes? Have processes been mapped and you've removed inefficiencies? You don't have processes mapped, or you don't know what process mapping is. So I'll give you guys probably another 10 more seconds to write it out, and then we'll take a look at our results. And today, the reason you'll find out soon why we're talking about process mapping and AI is they are very much impacted by one another. And so a lot of the time, organizations are looking to use AI for efficiencies and for automation. And so how can we figure out where you are in the process and how the conversation can help you best? So I'm going to end the poll there. And so it looks like a lot of folks on the call don't have processes mapped, or they have processes mapped. And in third place, don't know what process mapping is, which is great. We'll get into that in just a second. And then some folks have processes mapped and are removing inefficiencies. So that's really great to know. Thank you so much for sharing. And so as we are looking at what process mapping is and how to use AI, I'm going to go over today's agenda. First, we're going to talk about why the groundwork comes first. And so the foundations that you need to have in place for bringing in AI. We'll talk about what process mapping is and what process mapping you need to do before AI. and then give you a few practical takeaways so that you can get your organization ready today, and also think about some things and questions that can help you get through it in a smoother way. And so, with this question, I'm going to open this up to you, Ethan. In your experience and from what you know, what can be automated?
Yeah, awesome. So, in my experience, you can automate almost anything that is repetitive. So, any repetitive task you may have, maybe it's filing your taxes, maybe it's certain flows, maybe it's moving data and stuff like that. Anything that is repetitive at all can and should be automated.
And it's really funny. Well, I guess it's not funny. It's really interesting. I was listening to a podcast last week that because of how much AI is going to be able to help us and automate things, by the year 2030, we're going to be expected to do 10 times the amount of work that we currently do, which is all thanks to automation. So good thing, bad thing. I think it's a combination of it, but the reality of it is AI is here and in our lives. And so what can we do to be able to take advantage of it and to get ready for it as soon as we can? So a lot of the time, most organizations jump to tools way too fast. And AI is not really a substitute for strategy. You need to really understand what the problem is before you actually get into AI and automation itself. And so AI needs a clear outcome, something that it's solving. And without one, you actually get some really cool demos, but it's not really having the impact that you want it to have. And so you want to make sure that you put in the work before bringing in the tools. And a lot of organizations are challenged with AI adoption. And what I find is that when the problem is well defined, it actually enables AI adoption because it's solving real problems. And so for organizations, I would say start with a problem, identify high value problems, what the outcomes are going to be that you want to achieve, and define the measures of success, especially in terms of metrics that align with your strategy, and set leading and lagging indicators before building anything. And then number 3 is, I'll flip this over to you, Ethan, is around assessing data readiness.
Yeah, so data readiness is arguably the biggest part, especially if you have a bunch of spreadsheets, reports, transcripts, and stuff like that. You want to not only have an inventory of what you have so that AI can go through everything, but you need it to be well labeled as well. If you have awful data, you're not going to get anything out of it. It's almost going to be more detrimental than not having any at all. So make sure it's ready for when you throw it into those workflows and programs.
Yeah, and I know, Ethan, you've done some work also in cleaning up data using AI as well, but that's more of something that should be done beforehand, before it's going into the processes itself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when we talk about the foundation for what needs to be in place for automation, especially using AI, there's actually 5 foundational steps. But because we only have an hour together, we're going to run through the first 3, which is defining the problem, clarity of outcomes, data readiness. There's also aligning leadership and organizational readiness that we're not going to get a chance to talk about, but if you want, at the end of the session, you can write in the comments what you're interested in listening to more about. And we also have customized workshops that help teams and organizations with aligning leaders and with organizational readiness too, especially for automation. And so what's really fascinating is a lot of the time, what happens in organizations is people find out about AI and some of the cool features and functionalities, and they end up trying to figure out use cases that they can use AI with. And then they think about the risk, the governance, the tech infrastructure, change and adoption. But what they're missing is that initial component of it, that foundational layer that we're talking about right now. So organizations that go in without doing the foundational work end up with AI initiatives that fail to deliver the return on investment. And so that misalignment actually kills AI initiatives. So, first, let's talk a little bit about what are the different types of maps that an organization can have. First, if you're familiar with design thinking, which we do a lot about, you might understand where journey maps fit in. So, journey maps are the end to end experiences that customers have with your organization. And so, different types of customers might have different types of experiences with your organization. A process map is the steps that are along the way. And so a process map identifies what are the steps required for a particular task or a particular experience. And then the workflows are the task assignments and how they're interacting with different systems within your organization, where the decision, what are the decision rules within that process itself. And so if you know service blueprints are a combination of journey mapping, process maps, and workflows. And then the final one is standard operating procedures, so SOPs. And so these are the exact instructions that are going to be required, including timing, tools at a deeper level, so that people are able to go through the process itself. And so if we pull back and think about it as an analogy, if we're cooking, journey maps are a recipe overview and an understanding of what's working well, what's not working well with other people that have tried the recipe. The process map is the actual cooking steps. And then the workflows are the kitchen assignments. And so what's actually happening in each step. And then the standing operating procedure is basically the measurements that are required in each step along the way. So 2 cups of flour, 30 grams of baking soda. So they all relate to one another. And we need to understand where each one of them fits. And today we're going to talk a lot more about process maps because those are more the higher level. And then workflows are slight more detail of it. And at the end of the day, you want to be able to understand all of it. But today we're going to focus in more on process maps. So that being said, Ethan, I'm going to pass it over to you to talk a little bit about process mapping.
Yeah, so this is a quick process map that I built for someone recently for filing corporate taxes. So it's a big step-by-step process, all lined out, but not super specific, as you'll see. So initially, you have your doc upload. It's pretty vague, just some way to gather all of your documents. And again, your information should be AI ready before we get here. That's a given. But now that we're here, then you go into AI processing. So AI will go and break everything up. That's not the important part. It's the flow of steps. And then is it missing data? Then it'll go fix it. Is it ready to file? Great, let's go have a human review it. And then we'll go into prep, compliance, and then it'll go into submitting that file. So this is the first step before we applied any automation at all. We had to map everything out so we knew what the clear goals were, what we had starting with, and how we can get from our starting point to our goal.
Yeah, and if you do want to know a lot more about process mapping, certainly happy to have calls with anybody that's here. But there's a certain standard way of creating process maps. And so if there's decisions, they're usually in the diamond shape. And then as you can see, there's decisions that need to be made along the way too. Most organizations actually either don't have process maps or they're not up to date. And so if you don't have something like this for your organization, it actually creates some confusion and lack of clarity, especially as new people come on board into the team itself. Ethan, do you want to go ahead with
Yeah.
this one?
Yeah, so here's why process mapping actually needs to come before AI, like I said. So we have a quote from Gartner. It was a research paper done about 2 years ago. It says organizations that skip process documentation before AI deployment are 3 times more likely to fail to achieve ROI, right? And the main reason for that is because we never set a clear goal. Maybe your goal right now is to deploy AI, but that doesn't get us anywhere. We need to see where we're gaining time, how we can spend resources. We need to get a little bit more specific into that. So before introducing a tool, the single most valuable thing your team can do is document how the work currently flows and how you want it to flow, like I said. So to begin with, your AI needs a clear input and output, right? As we said, but it also exposes what's broken. So if you have a current manual process and it's pretty inefficient, you're thinking, let's automate it. It doesn't really work if the process sucks to begin with, right? We got to figure out the process and then we can apply that automation on top. And then it identifies the best AI opportunities, right? As I said, repetitive tasks are best to be automated. And then it creates a baseline for ROI. So once we can see how many resources we're expending on a certain manual task, we can see how much maybe we want to look into spending a little more to automate that task to see how much we get back. So this all comes in the process mapping stage before you've really done any looking into the automation or how much work it's going to cost. You just need to know what you have right now to see how you can get to your goal.
I love that. And I think that last point is super important. You need a baseline a lot of the time with in your organization to show the impact of AI as well. And so creating that baseline is really helpful to make sure that you're able to build on your business cases. And we had an interesting question in the chat too, is should organizations have all their processes mapped before even AI? Organizations usually have been having issues documenting everything. And yes, organizations have had issues documenting everything. If your organization is not really in the practice of mapping out your processes, I would probably create a strategy on which ones definitely need to be documented and which ones need to be documented first. And I would probably start out with ones that are either used the most or ones that are most problematic, or third, the ones that you want to be automating with things like AI. Super happy to have a conversation later around that too, because it depends on the organization and the culture as well too. And I've certainly worked with a lot of organizations where process mapping wasn't done or wasn't done at the level of detail that it needed to be done at, or it was way too detailed. And so it really helps to understand the organization and what you're trying to do. What I'd love to know, if you guys don't mind writing in the chat too, is how many of your key processes are actually documented in your organization in terms of a percentage? Take a minute to think about how many of your key processes are actually documented in your organizations. Yeah, there's a variety between 2 to 4%, 40 to 50%, 2%. Yeah, and I would say it's very rare that a lot of organizations have more than 75% of their processes mapped out. And some of you might not know too, and that's could be because it's not your area of expertise, but also because they might not be documented. And so it's really important to think about who would know where the process maps are, if there are any, and who actually owns them. Ethan, do you want to handle this part of it too?
Yeah. So let's get into what a process map actually looks like, right? We'll have a little before and after, and then we already analyzed a current process map. So we get a request, someone handles it, and it goes to the right team. That might sound like a process map that you have in place, but really it doesn't really explain everything, right? There's no defined input or output. There's no agreed decision points. There's no measure of anything at all. And three people can be doing the same thing three different ways. So it doesn't really unify anything at all. It's just a bit of a mess. So this is where most AI projects start and exactly why they fail, right? So a few numbers we've picked up here after you have made a process map is a 97% reduction in first response time. So that's from assembly AI. That's also with the help of AI, but that's when someone has sent out a request. How quick do they get it back? There's already a process that has been set out to be completed. There is nothing up for interpretation. It is clear input output, and it is 97% faster. And there's also been a 70% decrease in manual routing effort, just because everything is going to the exact right place. That allows for more automation to occur as well, and it speeds everything up. Then you have for Salesforce, they had an 80% faster information retrieval system just because they knew where everything was, because again, the process was mapped. It was super easy to find information because it was clear and everybody knew where it was. And then for a draft response, they saw an 82% improvement in total resolution time. That was according to Zendesk of this year. Again, everyone is clear on the start, the end, and everything that happens in between. There is nothing up for interpretation.
And this brings up a couple of questions to mind, and one of them is when you think about process mapping, if a new person came into your team, would they know what process to follow for what they need to do? And we're actually also having some really good conversation in the chat in terms of the fact that process experts aren't always experts at mapping, and owners aren't known for the process itself sometimes too, so they don't know that where to go, and sometimes the process owners don't know that they need to map it out too. And so this is a big challenge in especially large enterprise organizations, is understanding where the process maps are, who's the owner of it, and then also making sure that they're up to date as well. And then when do you start it, when do you end it? It all depends on what you have available within your organization, what the culture is, what you're trying to achieve. But in order to automate, these need to be thought through beforehand. And as you're bringing in AI, in order to have the maximum amount of efficiencies, these are all things that you want to be thinking about. And Ethan, you mentioned something really interesting in a previous slide too, is that when you use AI and you're going with processes that aren't either documented or processes that haven't had their inefficiencies looked at, you're basically going to end up scaling your challenges that you currently have as well. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
For sure. So if you have any given process, let's say, but there's holes in it, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Now you've involved AI, which is going to automate it. But if there's holes, it's just increasing the gaps that exist there, right? It may be taking awful information in and then doing stuff with it, but there is no useful generation. So now you've wasted all your time and money, and there's a bunch of holes in it. So it really just scales up all of the problems that exist, which could have simply been solved by mapping out the process, looking at it, you're like, maybe this step here isn't necessary. Maybe this ruins it. It's such a simple solution that it should be implemented already.
I love that. Thank you. We have one last poll question for folks on the line. And Jen's just going to pop it up, but where is your biggest bottleneck within your organization? Either is it around decision making, handoffs, data clarity, or customer experience? Give you guys about 15 seconds to answer that one. In your organization, where is the biggest bottleneck? Decision making, handoffs, data clarity, or customer experience? And as you guys are answering that, just a reminder that we're going to save a little bit of time at the end to run through some Q&As. So feel free to write your questions in the Q&A, and we'll make sure we're addressing it either around process automation, process mapping, or just general AI questions as well too. So I'm going to end the poll now. And it looks like a lot of people are having challenges. The biggest bottleneck in their organizations being decision making, followed by data clarity, and then handoffs. Yeah, and I think the decision making is something that process mapping and automation can help out with. And so from a decision making component of it, making sure that people know where all the information is, what the process is, and who needs to be making those decisions as well. And then Ethan talked about data clarity a little bit earlier too, is making sure that as you go through and get your data ready for automation and for AI, you're better able to understand what data that you have. And finally, the handoffs are also a big challenge too. And that's also where process mapping really comes in, and looking at it from a systems perspective to make sure that you're understanding where to hand off, who to hand off to. And last is the customer experience. And so that's when the journey mapping really comes in and is really helpful. So the way that I like to think of it is process mapping helps you understand and have clarity on the system, whereas the workflow is clarity of the execution, and then the standard operating procedure is clarity of the behavior, and then journey mapping is clarity of the customer experience. Ethan, this is another one for you. Do AI projects fail?
Yeah, 100% they fail. We got the stat right here from Gartner. 30 to 60% of projects fail. And there is a main reason for this, as we talked about earlier. There is no clear outcome. That's why most of these projects suffer. They don't have a process mapped. They don't figure out what they have to go where they want to have. So there's so much ambiguity that happens in between that a lot of organizations will simply give up on the project instead of seeing it through and really reaping the benefits that would come with it. Right? It's not because the technology doesn't work. It's because there was no map, there was no foundation that previously existed there. And again, rushed implementation, there's a bunch of deadlines coming in. But again, if we have slop to begin with, we're not going to get anything out of it, right? So it produces inconsistent and unreliable AI answers. So a lot of you might say we have a process, but it's not documented, it's not super consistent, it's not measurable. Those are some things you need to have in place to make this happen. And you may know where the bottlenecks are, but have you really mapped things out to know that? And then a lot of you obviously want to implement AI. You say you're ready for it, but again, you don't have that map in place. The use cases need to be identified, scoped, and tied to measurable outcomes. Your outcome has to be measurable and quantifiable.
I'm gonna pass this over to you again, Ethan, but before I do, when we're talking about going from process mapping to real automation, um, for the audience, maybe think about where would mapping your processes immediately create clarity. I think that's something that's really good to have in the back of your mind as you're ingesting some of this information. Ethan, do you mind running us through this?
Yeah, definitely. So as we have here, once you have the flow, the automation becomes super clear. It becomes super obvious what steps you can automate, where you can't, and how you can save a bunch of time, right? So some smart intake and triage options are AI reads incoming requests and routes them to the right team automatically. This eliminates manual sorting and then cuts handling time by 60 to 90%. So I think it was 17% of you guys said handoffs are a main loss of time. So to save 60 to 90% would be huge. And again, this begins with the map into the automation. And then maybe have an AI knowledge assistant. So staff ask a question and get the right answer from internal docs. Such a simple automation to set up, yet replaces searching three systems, saves you a bunch of time, right? Another option could be AI drafting responses, reports, or summaries for human reviews. So about 63% of organizations lack the data management to scale this. So this becomes before that process map, making sure all your data is ready, then having the map in place. But then you can reap the benefits once you have this automation. It's super easy to set up once you have the map to the automation. And then you can have automated approval workflows, which are some low risk decisions to get auto approved. There shouldn't be a human doing that, huge waste of time. And it was clear, according to the poll, that there is a lot of time wasted there. Then you could have automated reporting and insights, which is AI monitors process performance and flags anomalies before they become problems. So huge time saver, huge resource saver, and again, really simple once you have that process map in place.
Yeah, and this is just a part of it. There's a lot more that can be done as well. And I know working with a lot of larger organizations, sometimes there are process maps, sometimes there aren't. And then there's actually a lot of tools as well that maintain data, or there's spreadsheets that maintain data. And it's really important to understand what each of those does in the process And that's where the workflow and then the standard operating procedure come in as well too, so that you can make sense of it all and automate it. And so some of the work that we can help out in order to make sure that your AI implementation and your automation is lower risk is a phased engagement to get your organization AI ready without that guesswork. And so first of all, doing the process mapping, running facilitated workshops to document your current state, and also as part of that, the workflows, sometimes standard operating procedures to identify what the friction points are and help you get to understand what you don't know. So get to know what you don't know. And then second is identifying and prioritizing the top 2 or 3 AI opportunities by the return on investment and feasibility, and taking a look at your data readiness as well, so that you can get a clear ranked action plan rather than a wish list. And then third one is piloting. I'll push that over to you, Ethan, to talk a little bit about.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I do, what some organizations might do as well. It's super easy once you have that map in place to just make a small pilot, maybe a proof of concept. And again, it's super simple, super easy to do. So you could bring in someone like myself, bring in a few software engineers to solve your problem. But once you have that map, you could get such a high yield from such a little amount of work, but it could automate such a huge process and save a ton of time, right? So you get real results before you commit to something long term, like bringing in an entire team.
Yeah, that's really good. So getting your organization AI ready, it's about starting with clarity. And so defining the problem, your data, and your desired outcome before you evaluate any tools. And evaluating tools is super important, and maybe we can touch a little bit about that in the Q&A portion of it too. But most AI projects fail because of the preparation component of it. As you guys are thinking about process automation and AI, think about what's one area where AI would fail today because your process isn't defined. So what's one area where AI would fail today because the process isn't defined? And then map before you automate. So start with clarity, map before you automate, getting those process maps in, and then the workflows to find where the friction points are. And as I mentioned earlier, the process map is for the clarity of the system. The workflow is about the clarity of the execution. And then the standard operating procedure is about clarity of behavior. And then the journey mapping is clarity of the end user. And so understanding where the customer experience might be failing or can't or isn't as optimal as folks would want it to be. And then finally, treating AI as experiments as well too. So you still want to be running pilots with a clear understanding what you're trying to get out of it, and then measuring against the baselines too, and scaling what works and stop what doesn't. Like any project, lots of prototyping and testing, and building a portfolio of experiments is a lot better than just doing one large investment. And so thinking of it from a systems perspective, understanding where your processes are, what you want to be automating, and then experimenting as you're implementing AI with it. We do have a small course coming up on AI in action, and so a human-centered implementation to AI, and talking a little bit about strategy as well too. The QR code is posted here. It's a small group, and so if you want to find out more about process mapping and AI automation, check out the link. And we don't have it on our website yet, but hopefully in the next few days we'll have it up on our website. And it'll be Ethan and I teaching this one as well too. And if you haven't already, make sure that you're putting your questions in the Q&A. And as you guys are putting your questions in the Q&A, there's one final question that I want to be asking you and everyone on the call. Let me just go back. Sorry about that. If you could fix one process in your organization tomorrow, what would it be? So feel free to write in the chat. If you could fix one process in your organization tomorrow, what could it be? Um, as you guys are writing in the chat, I just want to cover one question that was in here. Um, it's what process map format does your workflow require? So some people do use Microsoft Visio. You can have your own format. I think the most important part of this is to actually have it mapped out. I've done process mapping with organizations um, by hand through Excel. There's so many different ways. Visio is definitely great. Some people are um, using other technologies and software for things like project management, and so it could also be in there as well too. And so, yeah, there's interesting areas in terms of what people would like in their organizations to be process mapped. So things like tasking efficiency, learning, project funding approval, finance, um, generic inbox email management, responding to client inquiries. Yeah, those would all be really great. So that being said, I'm just gonna open up the Q&A portion as well too. And we'll start out with our first question. As a new project manager, I'm wondering how familiar do I need to be with process mapping? Should I be an SME or should I just have the right people in my back pocket who I can lean on when needed? I think it depends on your organization for this one, and it also depends on how many people are on your team. If you're able to have someone on your team or have someone within the organization that does process mapping, ideally it would be really great to have someone in your back pocket that does process mapping. But as a project manager, understanding the processes and having it mapped is definitely something that I would prioritize, especially if you're looking to have automation within your organization. Ethan, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's awesome. But I saw there was a follow-up, like if you're having difficulties but benchmarking pain points in processes, I think that'll definitely become more evident in a process map as well. You can see where you're spending all your time, maybe where it's being wasted. It should be quite evident.
Yeah, I like that. And when I explain to people what journey mapping is, I like to think of it as um, you put your process map forward as a starting point, and then understand what's working well and what's not working well for the different types of customers that you do have. And so it's really important to, if you're looking for the pain points in the processes, to also talk to the people that are using the process itself. And sometimes organizations have been using processes for so long that it becomes second nature and they don't necessarily see where some of the challenges are. So it's always really fascinating to see someone new in a team go through the process using the process map to try to figure it out, because sometimes they can help you see things that you can't see. And I think that's one of the biggest contributors that we have as external folks going into an organization, is looking at processes and looking at process maps with fresh eyes to be able to figure out what might be a little bit more efficient and effective. Because when you start using a process, it starts to make sense and you get really fast at it and don't necessarily realize that there might be some ways of improving the efficiency for people that are new to the organization. And then also to take a look at what are some of the processes that could actually be um, automated in order to achieve the efficiencies that you want to have. Another question that we have in here is, whereas AI uses standardized repetitive processes, does it also take away the creative, imaginative functions previously done by people? How can people continue to exercise these functions once a process is automated? Do you want to take that, Ethan, or do you want me to take that?
We can both do it. I was more curious what creative, maybe imaginative functions there might be and stuff like that. But there's always opportunity for human input into these workflows, right? Like I'm sure, Noah, you've seen, you can still add yourself in. It doesn't mean you're just blocked out from doing anything whatsoever, right? There should be opportunities to put yourself in a workflow.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think in order to, especially if you're a private sector organization, in order to be more effective and impactful, you have to be more creative. And that's because everyone is going to have these tools to be able to automate their processes, to be able to create new applications, and to be able to do the operations component of it. And so there has to be more creativity in the people that are running the processes, that are creating the processes in order to stand out and also in order to be able to make it more effective. It's a different way of being creative. And so if there's creativity in how you are operating and how you're doing the processes, amazing. AI and automation, you want to make sure that you're embedding that creativity into the AI that you're creating so that it's able to help you out with that. But it's also pulling back and thinking about in a creative way and being able to reframe how and what problem you're going to be solving and how do you want to showcase that to end users as well, the visual component of it. So I think there's even more room for creativity, and the people that are going to win out at the end are the ones that are going to be more creative in how they're displaying things, in what problem they're challenged with and that they're solving. I think when I look at and thanks to Ethan, I've been playing around a lot more with AI recently. There's a lot of applications that can help you be creative, but also you need to have a different way of thinking about stuff than everybody else so that not only are you leveraging the technology, but it's also giving you more time for that creativity component of it. And that's, I think, the most important part of AI and automation. Let me see, is there a fourth question? Yes. How much is the human factor an obstacle to AI implementation? I suspect AI must be sold. I can take this one first, Ethan, and then if you want to comment on it. I think it depends on the organization and it depends on the parts of the organization. I have friends in technology that have been very apprehensive about AI, and I think I'm one of the folks that is surprised at the progress of AI itself. And because I've been playing around even more with it, I realize how much more it allows me to do and it allows me to be even more creative that I love playing around with it. It allows me to get things done a lot faster than I'd been able to do in the past with fewer people. And if you think about the podcast that I mentioned earlier on, by 2030, we're going to be expected to do 10 times the amount of work that we currently do. When everybody else is using AI and your organization isn't, it's going to really impact what you're delivering. And if you have customers or citizens that you're serving, their expectations are going to be a lot higher as well. And then in today's environment where we're being asked to do even more with fewer people and less resources, I think that human factor is going to be shifting rather quickly. But there is a bit of a sales component to using AI in organizations right now. And that's why it's really important to start out with that process mapping component of it, to understand what your processes are like, bring out the efficiencies or remove the inefficiencies. And then not only is that getting your organization ready for automation, but it's actually also doing what you're doing now even better. And then once people are okay with bringing AI and you've done some piloting and prototyping and testing on smaller portions of your organization and they can see the benefits, it's a lot easier to be able to bring in others that are more skeptical about AI into your organization. I've seen some organizations mandate that people use AI for certain tasks or certain things, and sometimes people can actually mess with how they implement things and say that they're using AI when they're not. And so that's why it's really important to have that strategy and understand what's going on in your organization to figure out what you really want and need to be automating initially. And then, as Ethan said, lots of experimentation too as you're implementing it so that you've got some real facts and figures in terms of how much it is improving and the areas that it can really up the improvement of processes and how your organization functions. Ethan, do you want to add something to that as well?
Yeah, I would completely agree. I would almost say the main obstacle to a lot of this implementation is people not knowing the extent of how it can be used, right? A lot of people see in the chat box and it's amazing and it can write reports, but they don't see that maybe you can have a few different instances. Maybe you have some agents, you can connect them, you can have a large workflow, a pipeline, and then you start talking to these people, and then once they see the extent, they're like, obviously, I want it. That would save me infinite time, money, effort. But a lot of people may not be educated enough to know that that's something you could do. And I feel that's also one of the massive bottlenecks that's going on right now.
Yeah. And we're not saying AI should be replacing everything, but if you're looking at bringing in AI for increasing efficiencies, here's where to start as well too. And so maybe starting out with parts of the organization where AI might not need to be sold to as well could be part of the strategy. Another question that we have is how can an organization keep track of environmental footprint once it creates an automation process, as most of the digital resources needed is offset to replace outside of the organization? I'm not sure I'm understanding that question really well. Ethan, no?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd love if you could reword or expand on that.
Yeah, that would be great. Um, Environmental footprint. Uh, a lot of people talk about the resources that are required to run AI, and it is quite substantial as well. And so maybe that aspect of it, that's not something that I talk as much about, but certainly that's a factor of bringing in AI. And then, yeah, I'm not sure if whoever wrote that comment, you could elaborate on that. That would be really helpful. Any other questions that are in the audience around automation, process mapping, journey mapping? We have another one. How do you have a comprehensive list of things that can be automated that you can provide for thought and consideration within our own organization in order to identify whether we could automate things we don't know? Yeah, that's a really great question. So I think that involves people from different parts of the organization coming together, either at a senior level or your enterprise architecture team as well could be part of that conversation to figure out what are the different projects that are in an organization, what are the different groups in your organization, and then maybe starting out with what are some of the processes that are used most frequently by a number of departments or a number of parts of the organization, or looking at processes that are challenging throughout the organization as well. I find that's a really good one to start out with because you already have something that you're looking at pulling out or increasing the efficiencies of it.
Yeah, I'd love to add to that. So they specified if we have a list, no, but if you could make a process map, you can automate it. The extent of things you can physically automate now is absolutely ridiculous. If you can fathom it, 100% you can automate it. I mean, if you had something in mind in particular, you can either drop in the chat or message us. I would personally be happy to answer, but 99 times out of 100, you could automate the process.
So, some examples of what our clients are doing is helping out with the automation of onboarding. And so it could be anything from helping out with automation of recruitment to making sure that a person in an organization has all of their technology that's available, that they've been set up on all the different systems, or another area that we do a lot of automation to is making sure that as new technologies are coming in and they're connecting with other systems, that's also a really great thing to be able to automate. Again, it depends on the organization itself. And there's a lot of terminology that you're going to hear around AI and around process mapping. And so at the end of the day, bring it back down to basics and make sure that you're understanding what the challenge is that your organization is looking to solve. And then as you understand that, putting in some measures of success, making sure that you're looking at your data, making sure that the data itself is clean. And then from there, the process mapping component of it is a huge part of it. If you have more questions, feel free to reach out to us at info@spring2innovation.com. Super happy to always chat. We do have some courses coming up around design thinking, deeper clarity, mindset, and then the AI course that we mentioned earlier. You're going to get a survey at the end of the session too, so please fill it out. If you are looking for more information on design thinking or deeper clarity, we have a lot of different resources on our website and on our YouTube channel. And the QR code on the right is also for our LinkedIn group. So we end up posting a lot of stuff in our Spring to Innovation LinkedIn group too about what's going on and what we're up to, how you can get involved. For those of you that are in the public sector, I have a book called Future Proofing by Design, Creating Better Services and Teams in the Public Sector Through Design Thinking, that actually helps folks understand a little bit more about the journey mapping aspect of it, and service blueprinting, which we talked about a little bit earlier, which is the combination of the journey mapping as well as the process mapping component of it. And again, if you have more questions, check out our website for coaching, facilitation, training. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me or to Ethan around process mapping, automation, or around AI as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, thank you guys.